Hello, church family. It's Good Friday, and I want to share with you my story of how Christ changed my life and what Good Friday means to me. I grew up in a Christian home with great parents that taught me the Bible. I went to church every time the doors were open. As a young boy, I went to kids' camp, and I remember a time when we were at kids' camp and the boy next to me went forward. And I thought, I probably need to do that. So I just followed. I went down front. I don't remember saying anything. I just remember the preacher that was at the camp just telling me what I did. I didn't make any transfer of relationship, of transfer of trust. But what I did was just walk the aisle. I was baptized. And I continued going to church every time the doors were open. I started playing the organ at our church in 8th grade. So I was there even more. In high school, going to Falls Creek was a highlight of our summer. And several summers, I felt God talking to me during the invitations at Falls Creek. And I would listen to them, but not completely listen. I'd go forward. And I thought, well, I already said the prayer, so maybe I just need to rededicate my life. Sometimes I just thought, well, I need to surrender to the ministry. I kept putting it back on that time at kids camp. But I never did anything at kids camp except walk that aisle. So I just kept on holding on to that time that nothing had changed. So going to Falls Creek, then going to college, and I kept holding on to that moment as a child. Liz and I got married, and then we moved to Kansas, serving on staff under a wonderful music minister, supporting him and learning and gaining knowledge from him. And I was still holding on to that childhood memory. But as the years went on, and as I began searching, I had a friend who walked beside me and kept asking me questions and asked, are you sure if you died tonight, you would go to heaven? And I didn't know how to answer that. I thought so. I hoped so. Because of that point as a child. But I didn't know for sure. As we were visiting, one day I told him, I said, I don't know. But I also don't know what other people will think if I went down forward and said, I need to get saved. Because I was on staff at the church. He talked to me many times. He gave me some tapes of some sermons about the wheat and tares and how the wheat grows, but the tares also grow as well. And the tares end up eventually just overtaking, and they stand up differently. And so through that, they look the same, the wheat, the tares, but eventually you know which ones are the tares. And so through that process, God was speaking to me so much, and I was listening more and more to Him. One Sunday morning in 2001, it's a November Sunday morning, I was playing the piano for our services. We had 2 services at that time. Played through the first service, and I was wrestling deep down. God was speaking heavily on me. So during the Sunday school hour, I just sat in the sanctuary and prayed, and just praying for a peace that passes all understanding, because I didn't know what God was trying to say at that moment. We went to the second service, and I played for that service. And as the service went on, as the message went on, I can't tell you what the pastor preached. I have no idea. But God was preaching to me, and God was speaking to me. Came time for the invitation of that second service. And the normal time when I would kind of slide up there to the piano to get ready to play, I looked at my buddy and I said, I've got to go forward and make this decision public, that I don't know Christ as my personal Savior. So I went forward. I talked to one of our ministers, a great friend to this day, and I prayed to receive Christ as my personal Lord and Savior right then and there. I remember before I went forward, my buddy said, well, who's going to play for the invitation? I said, I don't care. I don't know, and I don't care, because I've got to do this. I've got to be obedient to what God has called me to do. And the fears and the anxiety of what are people going to think were thrown out the window. And I was so warmly accepted and encouraged and loved on. And that is the day that Jesus Christ became my personal Lord and Savior. It wasn't back when I was a kid at kids camp. I was walking the walk and talking the talk, but I didn't know Him as my personal Lord and Savior. But now I do. And from that moment in November of 2001 to this day, if somebody asked me, if you were to die tonight, are you sure you would go to heaven? And I can say 100% yes. Jesus Christ is my Lord and my Savior and my boss. Things changed very quickly. Shortly after, God called me to the ministry full-time, and ever since I've been faithful to serving Him. He was faithful to hold on and wait for me to make that decision. I must be faithful to Him. God's got a great story for each one of us. That's my story. What's yours? I want to encourage you right now, as we are all at home. Many people are on social media right now, watching, looking, seeing what we are doing as the church body. I know it may be very uncomfortable for you, but I want to challenge you to make a video. It doesn't have to be as lengthy as this or as in-depth as this, but make a video, post it on social media, and tell people about your salvation experience and the difference that the Good Friday means to you, because He died on the cross for you. He died on the cross for me. And as in my devotion last week, oh, how He loves you and me. He gave His life for you. He gave his life for me. And Good Friday is a celebration because he gave up his life for me. He gave up his life for you. What are you doing to celebrate that? God is so good. He's so good to me, like the old chorus says. But this Good Friday, this Easter, it's different. And we're all struggling to find out how we are going to celebrate the risen Savior. Maybe this is a way you can celebrate. I also want to encourage you on Sunday morning, Easter Sunday at 9:30, my family is going to do a special time of worship right before our pastor's Facebook Live at 10 o'clock. So at worship will be at 9:30, and it'll be a special time. It'll be different than what we've been doing in the past several weeks. So I want to encourage you to be a part of that. It'll be a great time of celebrating the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. I want you to know that I love you, I'm praying for you, and that I am encouraged by your phone calls and your texts and your messages saying you're praying for us as well. This is a strange time, but God's in control. God is on his throne. Nothing has come by surprise to him. He knew that Easter would be different this year for us. What are we going to do to make it special?